The film began with the crew of the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier, which was controlling the flight of an F/A-18 fighter jet in the Indian Ocean. While in California, Captain Maverick served as a test pilot for a United States Navy fighter jet. Captain Maverick seems to open his motorbike and drive his vehicle towards the fighter jet testing facility. Arriving at the venue, the chief engineer named Hondo said that their superior, Admiral Hammer, would close their hypersonic scramjet program called Dark Star and divert their program funds to a more sophisticated unmanned fighter jet program. Currently, Dark Star has a limitation, namely that the fighter jet is not capable of going up to Mach 10. Hearing the explanation, Captain Maverick immediately invited all his colleagues to test the SR-72 fighter before Admiral Hammer came to the place. While doing the preparations, suddenly Admiral Hammer arrived at the facility. After all confirmed safe, the testing begins. The newly arrived Admiral Hammer immediately ordered Hondo to stop the testing. Maverick communicated that the SR-72 he was driving had a problem and continued testing. After arriving at the expected altitude, the effect of spurring the fighter jet until it reaches the desired speed. Slowly the numbers began to move towards Mach 10. With Maverick's abilities, he finally managed to spur the fighter jet to Mach 10. All the teams at headquarters cheered happily. However, it differed from Admiral Hammer, who seemed annoyed. Maverick, who is known as a person who always wants to challenge himself, feels lacking in his achievements. He again spurred the fighter jet at maximum speed. As a result, his plane catches fire in the sky and the team loses contact with Maverick. Elsewhere, Maverick enters a restaurant, which is still complete with his fighter pilot uniform. He then asked for a drink in the restaurant while everyone seemed to be looking at him. Not long after, the rescue team came to pick him up and took him back to the United States Naval Base. The next day, Maverick confronts Admiral Hammer. Admiral Hammer looked at the records of Maverick's achievements. With a series of impressive achievements, the Admiral wonders why Maverick is still captain. Maverick should at least be an Admiral with 2 stars. Maverick replies that he doesn't want to be promoted to Admiral because if he becomes Admiral he will never fly a fighter jet again. Admiral Hammer actually wanted to punish and fire Maverick for disobeying orders. However, due to other considerations, he decided to send Maverick to a naval air base in California as a Top Gun instructor. It turns out to be Admiral Iceman, who was Maverick's friend and former rival 30 years ago when he was still a Top Gun student. Iceman is now commander of the United States Pacific Fleet and orders Admiral Hammer to send Maverick as Top Gun instructor. Maverick seems very happy with the assignment. Arriving at the base, the air base commander named Admiral Cyclone and his partner named Admiral Warlock welcomed Maverick's arrival. Admiral Warlock immediately explained the mission they were about to undertake. Illegal uranium enrichment plants have been built in violation of various NATO agreements. The uranium produced there is a direct threat to their allies there. The Pentagon has ordered them to form a strike team to destroy the plant before it is operational. The problem was that the factory was in an underground bunker behind the valley, where GPS did not work. It is also surrounded by a missile system that detects heat and several 5th-generation fighter jets, attack helicopters, reconnaissance planes, even some very old F-14 fighter jets. Admiral Cyclone then asks how Maverick plans to destroy the factory. Maverick analyzed the site and planned an attack with 2 pairs of F-18 fighter jets. He said that the mission was very impossible, because even if they succeeded in bombing the factory, the fighter jets and missiles there would attack and kill them. Maverick is willing to take on this mission, but he still lacks 3 pilots. Admiral Warlock, who heard Maverick's explanation, then cut off Maverick's conversation and clarified some things. Warlock insists that he recruited Maverick back not to fly fighter jets but to train 12 pilots from various squadrons of the best students to be sent on the mission. At first, Maverick refused because it didn't live up to his expectations. But because this was his last choice and it was also the request of his best friend, Admiral Iceman, he finally received the order. After his encounter with Warlock and Cyclone, Maverick goes to a bar to calm himself down. How surprised he was because, at the bar, he met his ex-girlfriend named Penny Benjamin as the bar bartender. They both then talk about their memories of the past. Penny suddenly rang the bell, and everyone there cheered happily. She then showed a bulletin board where the bar had a rule that the Navy playing cell phones in the bar was tantamount to disrespecting the women there, and as a punishment, Maverick had to treat everyone there. Moments later, Maverick saw several Navy fighter jet pilots gathered at the bar. They are Hangman, Phoenix, Payback, Funboy, Coyote, Bob, and Rooster. One of the pilots catches Maverick's attention, where he realizes that Rooster is the son of his late friend in Rio 30 years ago, namely Goose. Among them all, Hangman has the most arrogant and pretentious nature. There is a spark of competition between Hangman and Rooster, who both claim to be the best pilots of their generation. Hangman then feels that he has the right to be their class leader, but they all ignored his attitude. Moments later, other pilots were also at the bar. They were Harvard, Yale, Omaha, and Fritz. Maverick then checked his wallet but found he didn't have enough money to treat everyone at the bar. Hangman and the others punished him by being forced out of the bar. When Maverick is outside, he looks back at the window and is stunned to see Goose playing the piano. Maverick remembers the incident in his past where he and Goose and Little Rooster once sang along to the same song that Rooster was currently singing. The next day, the Air Force admirals gathered all the Top Gun pilots. Top Gun is a school for the best pilots, and those who are selected will carry out the mission. 6 pilots will be selected as the main implementer, and one of them will be appointed as the team leader. The remaining pilots will continue to serve as reserve pilots. Admiral Warlock then introduced the instructor who would teach them. Maverick then appeared in front of the class. Hangman and the others were very surprised to see Maverick, who was their instructor, because they had previously forced him out of Penny's bar. Maverick begins his lesson by throwing away the manual for the F-18 aircraft they are about to study. He assumed that the enemy would also know its contents. The enemy doesn't know how skilled the pilot is in flying his plane. Therefore, Maverick wants all pilots to show their respective skills before carrying out training. Maverick meets Rooster. Hangman, who saw it, was suspicious of what really happened between Rooster and Maverick. Air combat maneuver exercises began. The rule in this exercise is that they are only allowed to use guns and not missiles. In addition, the aircraft's altitude must not be below 5,000 feet. 2 pairs of planes will fight Maverick. If Maverick brings down just one plane, he will win. Through a communication tool, Payback suggested that whoever loses should push up as much as 200, which was agreed by Maverick. The first practice started with the Rooster and Payback teams. Maverick can lock Rooster and cause him to lose and have to push up 200 times. Next, Maverick will focus on Team Hangman and Team Phoenix. In this practice, Hangman suddenly left Phoenix and made her locked by Maverick. Hangman then tries to chase Maverick, but Maverick takes his plane towards the sun and makes Hangman feel dazzled. Suddenly, Hangman's plane was locked by Maverick when he didn't notice. Rooster then challenges Maverick that he, too, can control his plane like Maverick. This caused Rooster's plane to spin and dive sharply until it passed the lower limit. Rooster tries to catch up to Maverick, but in the end, it was Maverick who turned to lock Rooster. Seeing the sparks of conflict between Rooster and Maverick, Phoenix asked Rooster what had happened between him and Maverick. Rooster replies that Maverick has withdrawn his file wanting to become a pilot at the Naval Academy. This hampered Rooster's aviation career. That's what makes Rooster hate Maverick so much. After the training, Admiral Cyclone then summoned Maverick. He held Maverick accountable for training students to fly below the specified limit. Maverick replied that later the mission to be carried out would be much lower. He also asked Admiral Cyclone to agree to the lower limit he proposed. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Hangman and Coyote have just discovered the truth that Rooster's father is actually the legend who once flew with Maverick. After finishing teaching, Maverick went to Penny's bar. There he meets Penny's daughter named Amelia. It turns out that the purpose of Maverick's arrival is to pay off his treaty debt to Penny. After that, Penny and Maverick set sail together to repair Penny's boat. Maverick then drove Penny back to her house. It seems that Maverick is now starting to get interested in Penny again. The next day, Maverick told his students what route they would take to complete the mission. He continued that the first step to successfully completing the mission was to fly very low to pass through the narrow, winding canyons of the mountains. The mountains are also installed with heat-detecting missiles that are ready to attack any foreign object that approaches. Therefore, they all had to fly under the radar range of the rocket. Maverick explained that to complete this mission, they had to fly at a maximum altitude of 100 feet and a speed of 660 knots. They also have to complete the mission in 2.5 minutes, because if it's more than that, then the enemy's Gen 5 starting plane will attack immediately. For the first practice, they will fly the plane at an altitude of 300 feet in 3 minutes. The first disciple to train was Phoenix. In this exercise, Phoenix had to shoot a missile because it crossed the altitude limit to avoid the Coyote plane that braked suddenly. Maverick advises them to always communicate with the team. The next exercise is Hangman plane with Payback plane. Hangman with arrogance drove fast without paying attention to his partner Payback. As a result, the plane crashed into the wall in front of him because it couldn't keep up with Hangman's speed. For the third exercise, Rooster will conduct a mission simulation with Yale. Rooster ordered his comrade to maintain speed, even though they reached their destination late. They were also declared dead in the simulation for giving the enemy time to attack their planes. Rooster defended himself by saying that he would fight enemy fighter jets no matter how advanced they were because, to him, it wasn't about the plane but the pilot's skill. Hearing this, Hangman commented on the death of Rooster's father. Maverick and the others immediately broke up the fight between Hangman and Rooster. The next day, Maverick meets his old friend, Admiral Iceman, who is currently suffering from throat cancer. Therefore, he can only communicate by typing on the computer. Iceman is a figure who is credited with being Maverick's savior so that his career remains safe in the Navy. Maverick then explained his complaint that he had no talent in teaching Top Gun pilots because his talent was to become a fighter jet pilot. Maverick also mentions Rooster to Iceman, where he sent Rooster on this mission. It could be that Rooster will die, but if he didn't send Rooster, then he would hate him even more. Maverick is indecisive and asks Iceman not to make him a Top Gun instructor anymore so that he is free from responsibility and Rooster can't hate him. Iceman then encouraged Maverick to become an instructor at Top Gun because he was the only competent person to be able to teach at Top Gun. The next day, Maverick invites all the pilots to play ball on the beach to increase cohesiveness between them. Their plan then succeeded in making the pilots closer to each other. That night, Maverick seems to be on a date with Penny and ends up with Maverick staying at Penny's house. During the stay, Maverick recounts the inner conflict he experienced with Rooster and his mother, who had entrusted him not to take him on a dangerous mission. It is also known here that Rooster's mother gave him the message to withdraw Rooster's file for his safety. Amelia suddenly came home in the middle of the chat, and Maverick had to run away from Penny's house. The next day, Admiral Warlock announced that the uranium enrichment plant was operating faster, so the mission will also be accelerated and carried out in the next week. Maverick then explains the most dangerous part of the mission. 2 dangerous things must be successfully done for this mission to run smoothly. The first important thing is that 2 pairs of F-18s will be heading towards the target and must cooperate with each other to maintain their position. To reach the target, the aircraft must immediately dive so it can fly as low as possible and not be detected by missile radar. After that, the first 2 planes will mark the target by dropping laser-guided bombs. The second important thing is that the second team will drop a bomb with a large explosive power to destroy the factory. If one of the teams fails, then this mission will also fail. After the factory was successfully blown up, all the planes had to go home up a very steep mountain. This movement makes the heart rate increase, and there will be high pressure on their bodies, so there is a risk that the pilot will lose consciousness. Not only that, after successfully passing through a very steep mountain, the plane will be immediately detected by the radar, and the missile will come to attack in a matter of seconds. Therefore, time is very valuable in completing this mission. The practice began when Team Phoenix paired up with Team Coyote. In this exercise, Coyote still failed to drop a bomb on the target, and as it dives, Coyote begins to regain consciousness. Maverick then locks Coyote's plane so that the plane's alarm goes off and Coyote regains consciousness. Meanwhile, the Phoenix plane explodes as it crashes into a flock of birds. Luckily, Phoenix and Bob manage to eject. In the middle of training, Admiral Warlock informs Maverick that Iceman has died. After Iceman died, Cyclone then dismissed Maverick as Top Gun's instructor. Cyclone said that the exercises taught by Maverick were impossible. The class was then taken over by Cyclone. Meanwhile, Maverick tries to prove that he managed to complete the mission in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. After proving it, Cyclone then appointed Maverick as team leader. After Maverick is appointed team leader, he then asks Penny for blessings for this very dangerous mission. The next few days were the execution of the mission. They were all on the carrier USS. Maverick then determines the main pilot who will complete this mission. They are Rooster and Payback with co-pilot Funboy. In addition, they were paired with Phoenix and co-pilot Bob. Meanwhile, Hangman and other pilots will be on standby on board. Hangman gives encouragement to Rooster. The pilots then occupy their respective planes, and the mission begins. Before entering the enemy's border area, the cruiser carrier will fire missiles to destroy air bases in the vicinity of the uranium plant. They then entered enemy territory by setting a time of only 2 minutes and 30 seconds. They could see enemy missiles at the edge of the cliff they were about to pass, ready to destroy anything that hit the radar. Meanwhile, the aircraft carrier informed them that 2 enemy Su-57 aircraft were on patrol. Maverick then spurred his plane to reach the target location before the enemy. Rooster, who was left behind, started to increase his speed. Bob, as co-pilot, then prepares a laser to mark the target. After Bob has successfully marked the target, Maverick continues by dropping the bomb at the location that Bob has marked. This was then followed by Rooster, who then dropped the second bomb. They then managed to destroy the factory. They had completed the first stage of the mission. The next stage is the pilots must pass through a steep cliff. But on their way back, their plane was detected by radar, and they began to be chased by missiles to attack them. Maverick then saves Rooster, who runs out of personal protective equipment. As a result, Maverick's plane was destroyed by a missile, but luckily, he managed to escape. Not long after, he heard an explosion. It turned out that the explosion was an enemy plane explosion, where Rooster returned to save him. Unfortunately, Rooster's plane was hit by a missile attack. Maverick then rushes to Rooster's place and finds that he is still alive. The two plan to escape from the enemy territory by stealing planes at the airbase, but it turns out the plane is an ancient plane. Luckily, the plane was still working fine. Maverick, with his ability, managed to make the plane airborne. Meanwhile, Rooster sent a signal to headquarters. They are all surprised that Maverick and Rooster are still alive. While on the run, they suddenly saw two enemy planes below Maverick and Rooster and then pretended to be on the same team as the enemy. They greeted the two planes as disguises. In his disguise, Maverick then attacks the two planes. But because the plane was so sophisticated, they managed to escape Maverick's attack. Unfortunately, the missiles on Maverick's plane had run out, and they were preparing to escape with the ejection seats. However, it turned out that the ejection chair could not be used. When they were almost at their wits' end, Hangman suddenly came to their rescue by destroying the enemy plane. They returned to base safely. All the crew seemed to cheer on the success of Maverick, Rooster, and Hangman. Maverick and Rooster seemed to make up and hug to make peace with the situation. A few days later, Maverick was seen checking the plane with Rooster. Not long after, Penny arrives, and Maverick takes her on a plane ride. Meanwhile, Rooster looks at a photo of his father with Maverick. The film ends.